Episode 1E, The Captain Kidd Connection. William Kidd began his career as a privateer, a mariner authorized by a government to attack and seize vessels belonging to enemy nations during wartime. His privateering commission was a highly sought-after license, offering both legitimacy and profit. Kidd's specific charge, authorized in 1696 under a commission signed by King William III, was to hunt down pirates preying on British interests in the Indian Ocean. With influential backers such as Lord Bellamont, Kidd appeared to embody the archetype of a loyal servant to the crown, but his trajectory would soon spiral into infamy. Part 1, Captain Kidd's Story. In 1696, Kidd set sail aboard the Adventure Galley, a 34-gun ship uniquely equipped for long voyages and combat. His mission was clear: capture pirates and their illicit gains, and protect British shipping. The investors, who included some of England's most powerful figures, expected hefty profits. Yet the realities of piracy and privateering were far more complex. As historian David Cordingley notes, the line between privateering and piracy was paper-thin, determined more by politics than morality. Under the Black Flag, 1995, Kidd's downfall began with the infamous capture of the Quedagh Merchant in 1698. The ship, a richly laden Armenian vessel sailing under French protection, seemed to fall within the purview of his commission. However, Kidd's decision to seize the Quedagh Merchant was disastrous. The political landscape had shifted back in England, privateering had fallen out of favor, and Kidd's actions, once considered serviceable, were now deemed piratical. Historian Robert C. Ritchie observes, the Crown, eager to maintain its image as a rule of law and order, needed scapegoats to prove its seriousness in combating piracy. Kidd was the perfect target. Captain Kidd and the War Against the Pirates, 1986. By the time Kidd returned to the American colonies in 1699, the authorities were ready to act. Lord Bellamont, once Kidd's strongest advocate, turned against him under pressure from the Crown. Kidd was arrested in Boston and sent to England to stand trial. During his 1701 trial, he faced charges of piracy and the murder of a mutinous crew member. Despite his protestations and evidence of his adherence to the terms of his commission, the trial was rigged in favor of conviction. "I have been sworn against by perjured and wicked people," Kidd claimed during his defense. He was hanged on May 23, 1701, his body tarred and displayed in chains along the River Thames as a grim warning to others. Part 2, Captain Kidd's Tales. The legend of Captain Kidd's hidden treasure has captivated imaginations for centuries. Before his capture, Kidd allegedly buried part of his plunder, intending to use it as leverage to secure his release or demonstrate his innocence. This claim is backed by tantalizing details and contemporary records, though concrete evidence remains elusive. One of the most prominent treasure sites associated with Kidd is Gardiner's Island, located off the coast of Long Island, New York. Historical accounts suggest Kidd buried treasure there in 1699, including gold, jewels, and other valuables. The island's owner, John Gardiner, later surrendered this cash to colonial authorities, but persistent rumors claim not all of it was accounted for. An inventory of Kidd's buried treasure reportedly included bars of gold, bags of silver, precious stones, and other valuables, a detail that further fueled the myth. Other locations tied to Kidd's treasure include spots along the Hudson River, Long Island Sound, and even Block Island. These sites have been the subject of numerous treasure hunts, with some yielding artifacts believed to be linked to Kidd. For instance, in the 19th century, a small chest containing gold coins was unearthed on Gardiner's Island, sparking renewed interest in the treasure's existence. Kidd's connections to New York lend credibility to these legends. He owned property in Manhattan and was well acquainted with the city's elite, including political figures who may have turned a blind eye to his activities. These ties also made New York a logical place for him to secure and hide his plunder. As Kidd himself reportedly stated, "I have wealth enough to make my peace with the world," hinting at hidden riches. Part 3, The Smith Family Connection. Stories of Captain William Kidd's hidden loot were legendary throughout New York and New England, regions where Joseph Smith spent his formative years. Tales of Kidd's buried treasure, rumored to lie in the northeastern United States near the Hudson River, gripped the public imagination. These legends fueled a pervasive obsession with treasure hunting and secret caches, a fixation that profoundly shaped the culture of the early 19th century. The cultural fabric of upstate New York, often referred to as the burned-over district, was thick with stories of buried wealth tied to Kidd. These tales, infused with supernatural elements like spirits guarding the treasures, echoed directly in Smith's accounts of uncovering the so-called golden plates. Joseph's narrative was steeped in this folklore, creating an inextricable link between Kidd's legendary hoards and Smith's treasure-seeking past. Dan Vogel drives this connection home, asserting, "The connection between Joseph Smith's treasure-seeking activities and the legends of Kidd's treasure cannot be ignored. Kidd's treasure was the archetype of buried wealth guarded by spirits, a theme that resonated strongly with Smith's early experiences." Joseph Smith, The Making of a Prophet, 2004. Vogel's conclusion is unshakable. Why? The influence of Kidd's lore isn't merely circumstantial, it's geographical and linguistic. In the Indian Ocean, between Africa and Madagascar, lies the Comoro archipelago, with its largest island named Comoros and its capital called Moroni. That's right, Moroni, the same name as the angelic figure Joseph Smith claimed guarded the golden plates. These waters were where Captain Kidd killed a crew member, sealing his infamy as a pirate. The linguistic proximity of Comoros to Cumorah and Moroni practically screams for scrutiny. While the connection isn't a direct match for Comoros, the similarities demand exploration. A website called debunkingcesletter.com argues, the settlement of Moroni did not become the capital city of the Comoros Islands until 1876, 32 years after Joseph's death and 47 years after the publication of the Book of Mormon. The possibility of Joseph seeing the names on a map is remote at best. It has not even been proven that Joseph ever saw the names or that any source available to him linked them. However, this claim crumbles under scrutiny. While the capital city of the Comoros may not have been officially recognized as Moroni until 1876, the name had been in use long before, dating back to at least 1427. It was one of only 2 key ports in the region during Kidd's time. The significance of Moroni as a well-established port and its prominence in the Indian Ocean means it's entirely plausible that Joseph Smith encountered the name on maps or in historical sources well before 1827. The argument that Joseph could not have seen the name on a map is not only weak, it ignores the widespread circulation of Kidd's tales and the established maritime routes. Joseph Smith's geographical knowledge, especially regarding the Comoros and the Indian Ocean, is much more likely to have been informed by these widely known stories than the CES letter's dismissive stance suggests. It is not just a remote possibility, it is a far more likely scenario that Joseph Smith, deeply immersed in treasure lore and familiar with the popular accounts of Captain Kidd, would have had ample opportunity to come across the name Moroni during his lifetime. A prominent hypothesis links Kidd's treasure lore directly to Hill Cumorah, where Smith claimed to unearth the golden plates in 1827. Local legends of Kidd's treasure may have directly inspired this narrative. The idea of an ancient hidden record buried in the earth mirrors the myths of Kidd's loot, complete with cryptic maps, markers, and secrets awaiting discovery. Richard Bushman underscores this cultural resonance, writing, "The idea of buried treasure served as a backdrop for Joseph Smith's own story. Whether intentionally or subconsciously, the parallels between Kidd's treasure and the golden plates suggest a shared narrative framework." Joseph Smith, Rough Stone Rolling, 2005. The parallels deepen with the concept of spiritual guardians. Kidd's treasure lore often featured spectral figures or magical enchantments that protected the hidden wealth, accessible only to the worthy or initiated. Joseph Smith's story incorporated a similar motif, with the angel Moroni serving as the divine guardian of the plates. This merging of material treasure and spiritual guardianship is a direct continuation of folkloric traditions. Historian Mark Ashurst McGee captures this dynamic, arguing, "These motifs likely shaped the young Joseph Smith's treasure-seeking ventures and later informed the angelic visitation accounts." Moroni as angel and treasure guardian, 2000. Captain Kidd's story evolved into a potent symbol of discovery, adventure, and hidden knowledge, archetypes that found new life in Joseph Smith's narrative. In the Book of Mormon, Smith reimagined these themes, casting himself as the divinely chosen discoverer of sacred relics. Fawn M. Brody, in her critical biography of Smith, emphasizes this connection. Joseph Smith's treasure-seeking past, steeped in the lore of Kidd's treasure and similar tales, provided a rich source of narrative inspiration for the discovery of the golden plates. No Man Knows My History, 1945. This 19th century obsession with hidden treasures extended beyond Kidd, tapping into a broader cultural fascination with secret knowledge and lost civilizations. Kidd's legends dovetail seamlessly with themes of secrecy, discovery, and divine intervention found in Smith's work. D. Michael Quinn elaborates on this connection, writing, "The folklore surrounding Kidd's treasure provided a framework that Joseph Smith adeptly reimagined, incorporating spiritual and biblical elements to elevate his own treasure story into the realm of sacred history." Early Mormonism and the Magic World View, 1998. The threads of Kidd's legend, interwoven with Smith's narrative, are undeniable. Part 4. Did Wilford Woodruff spills the beans? On December 11, 1869, Wilford Woodruff recorded a curious statement in his journal. President Young said in relation to Joseph Smith returning the plates of the Book of Mormon that he did not return them to the box from whence he had received them, but he went into a cave in the hill Comoro with Oliver Cowdery and deposited those plates upon a table or shelf. At first glance, Woodruff's mention of Hill Comoro instead of the expected Hill Cumorah stands out as a significant anomaly. Was this an innocent slip of the tongue, or was something more deliberate at play? Woodruff, having served in New York earlier in his life, would have been familiar with the popular tales of Captain Kidd and his ties to the Comoros Islands. Why then would Woodruff choose to use this variant of the name? Some have speculated that Woodruff's mistake may have stemmed from the influence of his missionary experiences in New York, where the stories surrounding Captain Kidd were prevalent. Raised in Connecticut, Woodruff would have grown up with the folklore of Kidd's infamous exploits, and during his mission in the 1830s, he would have been exposed to even more of the local lore. Could it be that his slip-up, referring to the Comoros Islands rather than the well-established Cumorah, was somehow connected to these tales? Another hypothesis suggests that Woodruff's use of Comoro might not have been a mistake at all, but rather a clue into the more obscure cultural influences at play. If Woodruff was quoting Brigham Young, it's possible Young himself was familiar with this term, particularly given that Young was raised in New York, and, like many in the region, would have been aware of Kidd's legend and the Comoros Islands. But there's something more intriguing here. Woodruff's apparent familiarity with the Comoros Islands name suggests both men may have been drawing from a more common well of knowledge, a knowledge of Kidd's exploits and the areas he frequented. It is likely that both Woodruff and Young were aware of these details, leading to Woodruff's unintended slip of the tongue. Could this be more than just an accidental mix-up? Could Woodruff have, in an unconscious moment, leaked the folklore of Captain Kidd with the sacred narrative of Joseph Smith? This hypothesis would have profound implications for how the Book of Mormon's origin story was framed within the broader context of 19th century treasure lore, an intersection of folklore and religious narrative that may have influenced key figures like Woodruff. In conclusion, the connection between Captain Kidd's treasure lore and the early treasure-seeking culture of upstate New York offers a compelling backdrop for understanding Joseph Smith's narrative of the golden plates. The parallels between Kidd's hidden treasures, the folklore surrounding them, and Smith's story of divine discovery reveal a profound cultural influence at play. Wilford Woodruff's 1869 journal entry mentioning Hill Comoro further deepens the mystery, suggesting a possible subconscious link between the Comoros Islands' pirate legends and Smith's sacred history. These overlapping myths and histories suggest that treasure-seeking folklore played a significant role in shaping the early Mormon narrative. Thank you so kindly for watching. This is the Ex-Mormon Informant signing off for today.